Oh. Sorry? Okay. Hello, everyone still in the hallway? Okay, everyone's free to take one of these bean bags if you want to sit down or stand around, or if you want to, whichever way is fine. We are still expecting most of the guests from Rotterdam because of some train trouble in between. I know that a few of them are still on the way, and train problems are on the better side right now. So probably they will come in a few minutes from now. But I think we should start because we have a full program ahead. Welcome to one of V2's Test Lab editions, this time in collaboration with Noordkaap Foundation. That's why this Test Lab is called Test Lab Goes Noordkaap, and the theme for tonight is Urban Play in Action, and you will find out why we chose that title shortly. For those not familiar with V2, because I realize a lot of the Noordkaap crew might not know us, we are an institute based in Rotterdam dealing with electronic arts. Sometimes by publishing on electronic arts, the outcome of our publishing company you can find on the white desk right there. We have a small development lab where we create electronic arts. So these are collaborations between our developers and artists. And we also organize events such as this one tonight, but also more workshop-like events or exhibitions, and we do so all around the world. Many of the projects that we deal with, either in our events, in our publishing, or in our development lab, deal with playful strategies in the urban space. And projects that kind of fit that description are now often coined urban play projects, and we will come back to that term later on this evening. By doing these projects and these events, we also found out that this is not only a field in which artists, performers and designers are active, but that it's also a common ground for architects and city planners to develop their projects. And in a previous event called Space Time Play, we tried to get these two parties in dialogue, or improve the dialogue that was already there between those parties. And this is an evening that we set up together with the Dutch Architecture Institute, and we had like a sort of seminar style event in which both architects and artists were represented, and they exchanged knowledge in this event, and also that there was a lively and fruitful exchange at the end of the event in terms of a discussion. So we were very happy with that, but in the evaluation afterwards, we asked ourselves the question, how many of these city planners and architects present at that event will now actually call up artists, performers and designers to help them out in their city planning challenges? And the answer to that, we had to admit to ourselves, was probably not too many. And in doing an evaluation, we also came up with a potential solution to this, and that was bring the artists, performers and designers to a concrete case in city or urban development and see if in this context this exchange would actually also have a practical value. So can we actually put this notion of urban play to practical use? And if not, that's also a nice thing to find out. Around that time that we were having this evaluation, we also got acquainted with Noordkaap Foundation, based here. It is led by Katja Diablo, who is also around here. Over there, yeah. And together we thought that that in the context of putting urban play to the test in such a concrete case, Noordkaap Foundation and V2 would actually make a nice collaboration, because Noordkaap Foundation is actually at the heart of one of Dordrecht's city development programs. And that is the development of the Voorstraat Noord, the street that you see when you look out the window here. So our plan for tonight is to first invite some of the parties involved in this development program into to explain to us what this case is all about. So what are the challenges faced in this project? Then we'll go through a range of projects that could be coined urban play projects, or at least that deal with either playful strategies or that are presented in the public space. And then at the end, come back here and evaluate what the value of these projects can be in the context of the urban development project of the Voorstraat Noord. From there on, we would also we would like to conclude on whether this whole notion of urban play is actually so useful to the architects and city planners when you look at it from a concrete case such as the development of the Voorstraat Noord. To lead this debate at the end, we have invited someone with a background in architecture, but also a good knowledge of art and media, and also connecting these in his daily practice. That's Mark Naylor, right here. And he will lead some of the Q&A sessions after the demonstrations, but especially the debate at the end. Mark Naylor is also part of Stealth Unlimited, who will also be presenting in the program tonight, but will be represented by two of his colleagues. Because we will take you on walks through the street to these demos, we also expect this evening to be slightly chaotic at times when people are entering and exiting these demonstration spaces. So that's why we decided to give you a small introduction to each of these persons in the program tonight, so that we make sure that you can walk in and out of all these demo places, but you know at least who is who and who is connected to which project. The first persons that will come here to explain to us this case of the urban development of the Voorstraat Noord are Stichting de Stad and, of course, the gemeente Dordrecht, which is the city of Dordrecht. These two parties will lay down this case for us, and the city of Dordrecht will be represented by an urban development specialist, Edwin van Son. And Stichting de Stad is an organization that is also dealing with the urban development of Dordrecht, but they do so through debate and discussion, manifestations, and also excursions to different cities to see how other cities tackle the same challenges. And this party will be represented here tonight by Hendrik Groeneweg. Then you have the opportunity to ask some questions if the case is not completely clear, but hopefully we will all understand what this development project is all about. And that means that it's time to go into the presentations and demonstrations by the artists here tonight. The first one of which will happen here in the space of the gallery of Noordkaap, and that will be a presentation partly and demonstration by Pablo Valbuena, who is an artist from Madrid that creates video and new media installations in the public space. And for those of you who have visited Today's Art only a few weeks ago, if you have seen the projections on the City Hall, you know how overwhelming his work can be. What he will demonstrate here tonight is not that project, but he will show some of the basic concepts or the basic components that he uses to develop these kinds of large-scale projects. And he will first show some documentation and then also show us a live demonstration of what he can do. After Pablo's presentation and the questions that might come up there, we will take you on a little walk to number 28 in the Voorstraat, which is that way, and we will lead you there, so don't worry to get lost. And there we will have a presentation by Stealth Unlimited, who are a collective that deals with urban systems, or trying to visualize things that are often unrecognized urban practices and relations in a city. And how they do that, you will see there explained by Anna Dorcic, I hope I say that correctly, so, and Mario Campanella. Mario is still on the way here, so we hope that that the trains will kind of start running soon, so he can also do his part of the presentation. Then we'll take you to the other end of the Voorstraat, which is number 181 and 183, for a completely different demonstration. This will be a demonstration of a spatially distributed ping pong game. And this will be carried out by Arjen Scherpnis and Ilko Wagner, who together call themselves onsignal.org. And both of them study at the Gerard Rietveld Academy in Amsterdam in the Faculty of Unstable Media Interactive Design. And they consider this connection between virtual and physical an ideal playing ground to test new concepts. And one of these concepts or ideas we'll see demonstrated here tonight in their project called Ping. Then it's time, when you're done playing the ping pong game, we'll come back here to the gallery space for a presentation by Arturo Hernandez, who is the current artist in residence here at Noordkaap Foundation. And he's from Mexico City, came in for this residency, and he fits very nicely in this program because his installations are often about public space or taking place in public space. And his installations sometimes feature film and documentary style materials, but also sometimes rough physical materials such as waste materials. And tonight you'll see the waste material that he will use for his installation here, dust. Then we have one more artist in the program, that's Edwin van Heide, a renowned sound artist who's based in Rotterdam and also an often seen face at V2. And although he's showing his work all around the world right now, he will present a project that's a bit closer to us here tonight. And that's a project he done in collaboration with CBK Dordrecht down the street here, and in which he collaborated together with Joost Rekveld to get 10 artists together to create what they call parallel sound worlds for the public space of Dordrecht. This basically means that 10 sound artists have composed a sound for the city of Dordrecht that you can hear by taking one of the GPS devices and the headphone in exchange for your passport, because otherwise we won't see you back. And you can walk through the streets of Dordrecht and make your own composition. But Edwin will explain what this project is about in more detail at the end. So after all these presentations, we'll come back here for a small evaluation on how these projects actually could contribute to the development of the Voorstraat Noord. And we would also like to take it a bit broader, how this notion of urban play could contribute to these urban development projects in general. And there, Mark Neling will lead the discussion and hopefully draw some conclusions out of that. There's one more party that I should introduce in this introduction of everyone, and that's MAÑANA. And they are a urban artist collective based in Rotterdam who recently opened their first gallery, and they are responsible for all these nice features that you see in the space, such as these LED throwies on the windows, which you are also invited to make yourself. The components are there on the table tonight, and they will also dress up this evening in terms of inviting some DJs over to play during the party later on. But before we can go into the party, we actually have a full program ahead of us. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Stichting de Stad, here represented by Henrik Groenewegen, to explain to us the case of the Voorstraat Noord.
Thank you very much. I'm not explaining the case of the Voorstraat Noord. I'm just introducing what we are doing as Stichting de Stad. We are a foundation. We began in 1991, and we have a simple goal here in Dordrecht. That's to improve the architecture and the urban space in this beautiful city. How do we do that? We make all kind of debates, all kind of projects, and one of the projects which we did is to search for the old colors of Dordrecht. So we had a project about 8 years. We went to the archives in the city. We looked at the old paintings. We had all kind of paint which was examined in laboratories. And so we could have a good
a good image of the colors which were used from 50-50 till now. After that we made this color fan of 55 colors, which are an inspiration of the original historical colors, but they are from this time because we are architects. We wanted to be this color scheme to have something of this time. So you can show, I can show you the colors, and it's very interesting that at this moment about 300 houses here in the inner city are painted with these colors. Before, 10 years ago, everything was, the windowsills were white, the doors were green, and now there is a different image to see. You see sometimes this purple, it's very difficult to see now with the light, but these purple doors, also English red, and of course Benthamer colors like yellow. That's what we did. What did we also? We made a guide of the architecture of Dordrecht, and I took some with me, about 20, so I will give you this as a present from Stichting de Stad. And now I will give the word to Edwin. Edwin was also a member of our club. Now he is only of the city council, and he will tell you something about the structure of the city. Thank you very much.
I'm one of the urban planners from the city of Dordrecht, responsible for the inner city, also the Voorstraat. The development of the Voorstraat is not finished after today. It's a very old street, several hundred years old, and has made several changes during the years. The project from the city declines a period of 30 years when the next generation of the Voorstraat is finished. On this slide you can see the position of the Voorstraat Noord in the inner city. You see the water, very important for the development of our city. And on this slide you can see the structure of our inner city. It has two main directions. One direction is parallel to the river, the newest parts of the city. So the upper parts are the new parts of our inner city. The red lines are the backbone of our city. It's the oldest part of the city. The Voorstraat Noord is also one of the oldest structures of our city. And the yellow lines are the connections with the backland from the inner city. On this old map you can see a different position of the Voorstraat Noord. I shall point this one here. And especially this part has a different kind of position in these days. Here a little in the old days the main route to our city was by water. Everyone came by water to our city. And well, we all nowadays go by car or by train. That is the original backside of the city. This was always the front side of the city. You came by boat, came on a square outside the city, through the gate, and then you became in the city. And with this square here, there was a normal structure directly to the Voorstraat Noord. That's an important change nowadays. Today still the harbour side, the water side is the most beautiful side of our city. And that's because it always has been the front of our city. The Voorstraat project started several years ago. This was the situation in the 90s. The shopping area, we have a big shopping area with very long pedestrian streets. You can see the red line, the edges of the shopping area. And we started in the 90s to redevelop the shopping area. New urban space, new shops in the city center of our in the city. We also started to build parking garages on the south side of our city. And that has made some developments in our city. The shopping area declined, it became smaller, it concentrated in the big part here. And, well, as you can expect, the edges of the city became in a lot of problems. Shopping's closed in the areas. They had less pedestrians through the streets. So it became hard to get some developments over there. This was the situation 2 years ago. Shops were closing. The public space is not of a very high level. When you came by boat, it was hard to find where the Voorstraat Noord was. And the public space is filled with cars, with all polars and that kind of stuff. But it's also a very nice street. The buildings are big, small, everything you can find in the Voorstraat Noord. Lots of chances for the Voorstraat Noord. It's well connected with the inner city shopping area. It's well connected with water. You can feel the water when you're in the street. A lot of shops were closed, but had also the possibility to, for new chances, for new developments in the city. And they started, well, I think some 1 year ago. The city council bought some of these big buildings, and they tried to redevelop it with some cultural functions, because the identity of this street was not so very good. Was it a shop only for antique, or only for some cultural functions, or just normal shop? No, it had not a big, very good identity. Now this was a few months ago, a big festival here in the Voorstraat Noord, and 5,000 visitors came to the street, and that is one of the big events to get this street back on the map again. The people had to get the street back in their mental map and see that it's a position in the whole city. It also has big chances in the surroundings of the Voorstraat Noord. Here you can see the enormous amount of water in our city, around the city. Transportation by water is one of our biggest chances. Rotterdam is well connected by the water with Dordrecht. So the next time take the boat and not the train. This was one of the old squares outside our city walls. This was one of the main entrances to go in the city. Nowadays it's a very empty space with only residential areas, and you cannot find our historic center. When a few slides ago, you can see we had only parking space on the south side of our inner city. We are building a new parking space on the north side of our inner city, so also people can go by car to the north side and go through the Voorstraat Noord to the other parts of the city. The public space, because it's a mixed area, not also shops but also a residential area. You can find a lot of cars in this street, and cars mean also lots of traffic signs, polars, etc., etc. The public space you can also use on a different way. What happens if we if we take the cars outside of the street? Are there other possibilities that mix with cars? The areas on the edges of the Voorstraat Noord are redeveloped the coming years. This is one of our cultural hearts. Lots of museums are in this area. The main museums you can see in this area. The cultural heart of our city. Another big redevelopment is Stadswerve on the other side. It's a very big area and it becomes an extension of our inner city. We connected with our inner city with bridges and new cultural functions in this whole area. You can also see here redevelopment of the water tower area. This is also becoming a great cultural function. And here we are planning a new bridge. Well, some images that hopefully in the future will be realized. And the position of the water, also very important always for our city. The Voorstraat Harbour, very close to the street. How can we connect both sides of the street with the water? What can we do more with the water than only the little ships, the little boats? Can we make a connection with the street and the water again? Because this is the oldest part of our city. Well, we started a few years ago with a light project to make the connection in the evening visible again. Maybe there are other parts in this area possible because here is the distance between the street and the water is a little bit bigger than the other side. So we didn't work with light here and we waited till the redevelopment of the Voorstraat Noord to maybe there are new possibilities. This is the situation about, well, maybe 15-20 years. And then you can see a new position of the Voorstraat Noord in the structure of the whole inner city. The touristic side with the harbour in the north side, Stadswerve, the shopping center, and the Hofkwartier on the south side. And the Voorstraat Noord is one of the main connections to all these developments.
Maybe you can. Does it work? Okay. Maybe you can stay for a few secs to ask you a couple of questions. Also, if there are questions here in the audience, please ask them. I got on the internet. I downloaded this plan. It's the plan for this for the redevelopment of this street. Or actually, I think Anna downloaded it for me. And it says that the redevelopment of this street goes along 3 tracks. One is to bring in cultural entrepreneurs, another is to bring in cultural program, and the third is to do interventions in the public space.
That's for the short time.
That's for the short time. It's to activate, I guess, the whole process. Now here we are on an evening on urban play. We are here in a cultural play. Of course, I would like to ask you first of all, why is the word creative so important in the redevelopment?
Because our city is a very historical city, and history and our inner city is always connected together, and always connected with the water. Through the whole inner city, we have streets with antique, normal shops for tourists also, but a cultural heart, new cultural heart, not the old cultural, but a new modern way isn't found in our city. And because the Voorstraat Noord has had a little bit of a problem to identify itself, we thought this was a chance to redevelopment Voorstraat Noord, a new cultural heart, because there were also a lot of cultural functions these days in the street.
But then what do you expect from cultural entrepreneurs? What is the role of a cultural entrepreneur? What is he or she supposed to do in the street?
As much as possible. Because the development you can say as the city council starts the redevelopment with big plans. A public space, also start with new developments at the edges of the city, but we thought of a different approach, start a bottom-up approach, and first of all, see what happens, and make as much possible as we can think.
Do you have any idea of what could be the contribution, and what kind of terms are you thinking there?
What functions or?
No, but if you are calling in cultural entrepreneurs, what are they practically going to do for your redevelopment case?
I think two things are very important. To make the street visible again, not only for people from outside the city, but also for our own inhabitants. I think they lost the street several years ago. So that's important to get the street in their mental map again. And the second thing is to start redevelopment of all the existing houses, existing shopping all these places where we are now, start redevelopment. And when you're working together, not only the shopping owners, but also the inhabitants, the residential, then I think there's enough potential to get this street as one of the main connection again. Because we have the other way on the edges, there's a long way to go. And you cannot wait 15, 20 years when the other developments are finished.
And besides the cultural entrepreneurs, it also speaks about bringing a cultural program. Is there a difference in what cultural program has to do here in the redevelopment and what the cultural entrepreneurs are bringing in?
I don't understand the question.
Well, basically you say there are 3 tracks. One is to bring in cultural entrepreneurs, that's basically business.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is to bring in a cultural program, I
Mhm.
guess cultural institutions executing programs. Do they have a different role?
Yes. I think the different role is to, in a time period, you have activities that are very short and very heavy. One of the events was the Voorstraat Noord festival. And one day 5,000 people came to this street, but that's not enough. They have to come tomorrow and the day after also. So you have to do both things. You can do one thing at one time and then do nothing again. So you have a track that takes a little bit longer, and you have activities that takes short periods of time. Yes.
Okay. And you're an urban planner yourself. I think your main field is the interventions in the space of the street. Yeah. How easy is it for you to think about the component of cultural or creative people coming in? Is it something which is easy coming together with your activities, or is it actually something which is rather in the field of maybe city marketing, and your field is a slightly different one?
No, I think one of the good examples is the lighting program we did in our city. I work for several years here now, walked many times across the street, and the water was there, but I didn't notice it anymore. And people from Lyon came here. They we invited them to do something with lighting here, and they say, the water is there and you can't see it. The connection is gone. I didn't realize it. Not anymore. So they make me look in a different way again to our inner city. I think that's one of the big voordelen van working together.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Silence. Now, please, if you have any remark or any question, please break in. All right.
Yeah, I was wondering about the people from the neighborhood. How are they involved in the urban planning of this neighborhood?
Well, you cannot do it alone. You have always worked together with everybody that's involved in the street. And that's how we as City Council started this project together with everybody in the street.
Can you give examples of what kind of things?
One of the little things, the painting project is a little thing. As City Council, we make a subsidy for painting, but on the conditions that we say, hey, you need to have an architect to give an advice about the color of your, and some other different some flowers on the facades, that sort of things. Just little small things to start it up.
Are you known that this field of urban planning?
A little bit. Not in this one.
Okay, then maybe we should go and see some. Okay, Pablo, are you ready? I'm going to give you this mic. This one has a slight noise in it.
Good evening. My name is Pablo Valbuena. I'm going to get this topic in a quite different way from my personal approach. My background is architecture. I studied architecture in Spain, but now I'm working as an artist, and I'm going to talk about my view of. I'm basically researching about the space, but in a quite different way. Not that much talking about function, but researching into other more abstract concepts, how we perceive the space, how we can engage with the space, how we can manipulate the space. And for me it's quite important the relationship between physical space and how we perceive it. I'm going to try to be quite fast because this, sorry if I skip some slides, but it was intended for, this presentation is a bit more long, but so I will try to be fast. I'm going to talk about, in the first block, about some things, some ideas behind my work that I think are important and that could be related easily to what we are talking about how to work with the urban space. I'm going to talk about some ideas about recent spatial research about perception and what I call augmented spaces, and just also showing some recent works. I'm going to do a very short demo and show a video of a recent work. Talking about spatial research, I'm really interested in how space can be taken to another level. We are used to perceive space in a three-dimensional basis. We are used to design space in a three-dimensional basis, but I'm really interested in how space can be thought as something with a different layers, not just the three-dimensional approach. I'm really interested into the links between space and time. From this point of view, like the first cinema. This is some slides from Edwin, and he was really starting to link this idea between the moving image, between space and how this space is being transformed. I think in this case, film has been very important. I'm really interested also in cubism and how it's starting to change the relationship in space between the different elements that compose one object, for example, and how this can be broken, how this can be reassembled, how this can be put together in the same plane. In the end, it's thinking about time and space in a different way. These are some works from Constant. It belongs to the situationistic movement, and it's really related on how we set up a system that can be arranged by the person who gets there. Not really not focusing that much into defining a certain space, but defining how this space can be transformed. It's really focused on the experience about this space and how this space can be transformed by the people who are inhabiting it. The other topics that I'm really interested in cinema now, as we talk about the Muybridge, there are some really interesting approaches about how we treat space, how we treat time and space as something that cannot be disconnected. And film, for me, it's something that has been get very far in these terms. All these, well, you can talk. There's not time to talk about phenomenology and how Baschz or Deleuze or certain ideas of how time can really get very melted with space. Now, there's something that I'm also really interested in, and I think that this is very important for the public space, and it's not really visualized right now. It's how the new information technologies are affecting the way we live. It's if we think about how we can live without email. Right now, it's difficult. And in terms of work, obviously, but how these connections are established, and they don't really get into a physical level or into a city level with a very clear visualization. I'm really interested into these different layers that could talk, that could be related to space, and that somehow takes a space to another dimensions, to other levels. In the end, it's starting to think about the space, about the layer space, the n-dimensional space, augmented spaces. My point of view is try to reach to this next level of space or space research with perception. I'm really interested into, instead of working with a physical object, like working with a space as something physical, I'm really interested in to work with what is in between, with the medium. If you think about it, when we perceive an object visually, what we are perceiving it's not the object itself, it's something that is reflected, the light that is being reflected into the object, and it's getting into our eyes, getting the information about the frequency, color, about how the light is reflected there, and we are getting that information into our eye, some sort of memory of that object, and we are interpreting it as a real object, as a real perception. But we are not perceiving directly, we are perceiving what is in between. I'm really interested into taking this idea and start working, instead of if we perceive a certain object, the perception makes us see it as obviously the same object. If we change the object, the perception changes. But what happens when we start working in between and we start altering, we start adding stuff, we start changing the perceptual qualities of an object, not altering physically, but altering how we perceive it, working with light, working with sound. I'm really interested into taking, instead of working with volume, working with mass, working with material things, trying to work with how we perceive it and change the spaces with this idea. This idea of space plus perceptive intervention is what I call the augmented space. And for me, a good example is the work of James Starrell. For example, it's really a good, for me, it's a great inspiration. This was done in the 60s. It's just really, just with very simple projections of light, he's able to open spaces to make you see what it's not there. And I'm really interested into this idea of just, in my case, through light, just being able to show things that are not there or interpret a certain space in a way that it's not physically there. I'm going to go quickly through some recent works. I'm going to talk about the augmented sculpture series. These are basically some pieces where I work with very constructivist geometry, and I overlap a layer of projection on top of that of those sculptures. So basically, for you to get an idea, is if we would take a picture of an object with a certain lens, and we project the same picture from the same point of view, you would overlap the picture with the object. you're going to see later, and it's going to be a bit more clear. But the idea is to work not with the object, but with the projection. So when we start manipulating the light qualities, the shadow, the light qualities of the projection, we can really have we can really give the illusion that we are manipulating physically the object. These are some first models, really small scale models, just very architectural-like models. These are some sequences showing the progress of certain projections on top of that model. This is the first model that went up a bit bigger in terms of scale. It really, the change of the scale was really quite surprising for me in a way, because you really, when you start thinking about not in an objectual basis, but thinking about how you are surrounded. Now is this change between a sculpture and architecture? You know, how you sculpture, somehow I perceive it as something that you can control in a you can walk around, you can control in a more, it's this idea about exterior and interior. Now the scale really is changing a bit this perception of how you are involved in this space. No? These are some other shots of the same sculpture. These are some different levels of the same sculpture. This project has been presented in different places, and it has been with different interactions. The larger piece I have done in this sense is something that it was still indoors, but it was very interesting in the sense that it was working with a theatrical scenario, and I was really interested into taking this idea of being able to play with the space into a character, even, no? into a play. No? So this was a really interesting way of testing, also in terms of scale, how you can really alter very deeply, you know, a space and how this establishes a relationship in this case with dancers or with performers, and it was for sure an interesting also step further in terms of scale. I'm going to show some public installations. These are this is basically taking the same idea about projection, but taking it to the public space. It's really important, this change about working with a very controlled model where you control the geometry, you control everything, and then jump to the public space where somehow the public that is going to see the work is very different. They are not really going with a certain idea of what's a piece of art or what they are going to see. It's, you have access to very different kind of people, and that's very interesting because you get really different approaches, you know? And people react with the work in a much more natural way. They are not so aware of not touching. Or so projection in this sense was, for working in the public space, was really interesting because you are not changing physically. We all know in terms of architecture how many limitations in terms of touching just a small thing of a protected building, or it's really different to go out of certain limits. No? With this idea of working with light, you can, at some points, you can really perceptually, you can really alter the building in a very big way, even not touching it physically. No? These are some shots of a square in Madrid. This was done for Media Lab Prado in the center of Madrid, and it was just a complete square, just working with the architectural lines, working with the tilings, we were working with the trees, the benches. First, well, I'm going to show also. I think I'm going to show first one very short. It's not the piece itself, but I think it's going to show you to give you an idea of how this idea works live. No? Because it's nice to see photographs. I think it's much nicer, even if it's very simple. I really didn't have much time to prepare this, so you're going to get the idea. No? It's just working with architectural lines, and in a way, you can really enrich the space itself. Now here you see just very simple architecture, very simple just corner. So And you can start like working with the lines that conform this architecture. You can start building planes on top of it. You can start defining certain areas that you want to work with. You can extend somehow all these elements. I don't know, just start focusing on resolution of certain elements. And this is what I'm talking about. You can start changing, defining them, but also changing the light qualities of it. And maybe start working with how you light these planes. It's very interesting because you get for free, I mean, just for lighting one plane in this case, you get for free all the physical aspects of light. No? You don't really, technically it's not very complex in terms of light. And for example, we have been talking about light. No? I'm really interested in to develop public light, not just as something that works with contrast, no? But it's not about, I think light could be more subtle than just focusing, trying to say, I want to focus on this building, or I want to focus on this element of the city. I think could be much more rich in a way, and try to, for example, to develop, I don't know, but even certain elements, talk about certain elements of an historical building, or I think this is just a layer of information added to real architecture in a way, and I'm using it for abstract, more abstract spatial research, but this could be used for showing circulations of a city. We were talking before about how this idea of projection could depict like abstract architectural ideas, no? How long somebody stays in the same place for some time, no? And you could even have a map of a certain area of people. So I think, yeah, with this you can have an idea of how easy it is perceptually. Just around, you can really see how the light changes very easily, just with a very simple light approach. No? For example, this is a really interesting part. I'm going to show you. It's going to be clearer in a video, but it's also interesting how you can work with light and shadow, no? And you can really give the feeling that we were talking about time before. I'm really interested into showing the pass of time through space, no? And with light and shadow, you can somehow really give this feeling. So finally, I'm going to show a video. If we can turn off these lights. Thank you. This is a project I did for the Heide. This was done for today's art festival. It was done like past month, and it's a project that is taking this idea of working with the public space to a really higher dimension, higher scale, and it was done at the facade of the Richard Myers building in the City Hall. It was quite like the perfect building to project on top of, because it's basically white, everything is white. So that's for light purposes, it's very easy to do, and it was also very modulated, so it was really easy to work with that geometry the video has some slight audio. If we can. this is, for you to have an idea, yeah, this is quite the same thing that you have seen, but in a larger scale. Everything is recorded directly live there, so it's just the way you proceed it is this way, and also, well, it's more interesting in the sense that the scale really changes the way you perceive it. You know? When you see something like this from different parts of the square, it's quite different than just watching on video. So this is kind of the latest project in terms of the biggest one, also in terms of scale, and yeah, that's I think that's everything. If someone sorry if it was very fast, and maybe it was quite a lot of information, but I think it's worth it to show the whole process and the ideas behind, and finish with maybe the real thing.
Does anyone have a question for Pablo? All right.
Hello. I was wondering how modular your piece is. If you'd like to put it in another place like one you had in The Hague right now, every time do you have to sit down and model the whole system and think of how it should reflect or not, or is it an automated system where you just put it and it measures it? And you have to remodel it.
It's not automated at all. It's very site specific. So it's working with the building itself. I work in 3D, so I work in 3D and then project the geometry from the same point. But, well, theoretically it should be as easy as that, but it's not. In the end, it's not that easy. But it takes some time to adjust the projection. The good thing is that once you have adjusted, you have really a frame to keep working and to keep even. I mean, you can leave some projection for a certain time or for a certain part of the year, and then at some point you can decide to change it, you know, and do a different thing. So it's also interesting to think this as a work that could be developed in time and changed and maybe suit to different necessities. So.
And in the project which you showed before with the square, with the benches, were people actually using the square while you were projecting on it?
Actually, that was one of the nicest things, because when you do work in the public space, you get for free a lot of reaction from the public that you don't expect at all. And it was funny to see there were some lines being building the geometry of the square, and it was really nice to see there were dogs and children running just with the lines and following everything. People really wanted to interact also with how the shadow is perceived into all this projection. So it's nice to put the work and see how people react, and then you get a lot of feedback from for further works, or do you discover new approaches? No? But yeah, people tended to really get in the space.
Did you ever make this in a more permanent version?
This was quite permanent. This is started for something that is called Noche en Blanco, like the New Blanche in Paris, or like kind of this festival for 1 year, or 1 night or 2 nights. And this was, they liked it, and it has been for nearly 9 months. So this was quite permanent. And the Heide installation, it's going to probably also develop into something more permanent, hopefully. But yeah, so the first approach is usually quite fast, but it's true that once you have it running, it's interesting to, I mean, it's nice to have the time to develop, to see how people react, to change some stuff. So, but yeah, this one was for 9 months, I think.
I'm going to hand you over to Michelle and Katja, who will take us to a space down there in the Voorstraat.
Yes, all put on your jackets because it's freezing cold outside. And we'll take you to the number 28.
Which happened at B2 in Rotterdam in December 2005. And this project started with the idea that a number of artists were invited to do a project about invisible sides of the city. So about, for instance, sound which is not perceivable, about territories in the city which are not touchable or not mappable. And the project that we did, on which you can see the projection, it's a recording of a computer simulation on the right side, and on the left side there are some images. The project that we did was made actually in collaboration or in relation with the project with Edwin, Heide, who is also here and who is going to talk about another project later on. Our projects were mapping just bit to the street in Rotterdam, and in different ways. I will explain in which way, but maybe just a few words about the Witte Street. The street, Witte Street, is maybe some way parallel to what are the wishes to happen in this street here, and that is why we decided to show this project. In this street, we decided to map 2 different things. On one hand, Edwin was mapping sounds from the street, and through the lights they were projected in the space of V2, so you could, with a certain device, come close to these lights, and lights would give you the sound directly from the street, from what is happening at that very moment. So, for instance, you could imagine that happening also now here. On the other hand, we decided to make another overlay over that, over the same stretch of the street, which was projecting temporary territories that were formed in the street.
When I speak about temporary territories, they're formed, like for instance, by a group of people like us standing here, and by just the simple fact that we are here together, we form a certain territory within which something happens. These territories are usually not visible on city maps or certain sort of perception of the city. So what we decided is to map them and through the simulation bring them forward. Witte Street is an interesting street for the fact that there are many cultural institutions on the street, many restaurants and different sorts of places, like what maybe could be called cultural street. What is interesting to know is that Witte Street is also a sort of social engineered project. It's not something that just came by itself.
but there were a lot of inputs from the city government, from different organizations like WON, like Ontwikkeling Maatschappij, or Neighborhood Development Society or Foundation, who put a lot of effort actually to develop the streets. So they, from the beginning of the 90s, were making a lot of programs and different pushes to change the character of the street, from the street in which there was a lot of drug dealing, in which there were a lot of coffee shops and Chinese restaurants and gambling houses, to something else, and something that we know today. On the other hand, it's also a street which is interesting for its public life. On the other hand, also there are a lot of different things happening in Rotterdam which are pointing to some sort of problems that are seen as the problems in the city of Rotterdam. Like, for instance, places, maybe not admitted to Wit Street, but places, for instance, where young people hang, and which is not perceived as a good thing, or places where it's forbidden to drink alcohol in the street or gather. Places where there is, let's say, large-scale privatization of public space going on, like, for instance, Cope Code. And what we decided to do is to extrapolate to some sort of extreme these tendencies on the Wit Street. So, for instance, we observed how the pavement is used by different like restaurants, cafes, stands to sell things. And we used some of these tendencies which I explained and extrapolated into extreme in the simulation that we developed. So this drawing maps what happens in reality, and then these different, let's say, temporary characters that are formed, they are translated into the simulation you see on the other hand. Now, how this model, in very simple words, how it works, is that we borrowed software, let's say, which is called NetLogo, which is used for research of public space usually, and it simulates usually movement of pedestrians. In our simulation, we used movement of pedestrians, of cars, and of bicycles as a mean to map these temporary territories. Here we see the functional areas of the simulation. We see building blocks, we see zones in which cars are passing, parking zones, bicycle stands, sidewalks. Then we see another, this is only visible, let's say, for you in the simulation itself. Then we see directional forces. So people that are moving along the street, they have certain forces which are pushing them or pulling them to go certain directions. Then we have potential fields or envelopes where possible things can happen. So within this spatial frame, something can happen. For instance, if there is a restaurant setting a terrace, it cannot put it on the street where the cars are passing, but only until the edge of the pavement. And in the end, there is a certain street geometry. On the screen on the right, we have two scenarios running. So what we did is that we made two stories. I think that soon the first scenario is starting, this is the second one finishing, so there will be another one starting. And this one was called Reclaim the Street. So what is happening is that you see the street like normally as it is. The green areas are places where there are terraces of restaurants, like for instance, big restaurant bazaar is the thing which you see on the right side. You see movement of people and cars and bicycles. Bicycles are green dots, bigger dots, orange, small dots are people, and then cars. And what is happening at a certain point, the city decides to rent more of these pavement spaces to different people. So let's say the pavement gets partialized. And now what you see happening is that these spaces become attractive. People start to set up certain things on the pavement. These attraction fields or these attraction points now start to gather more people coming into the street. that later on, I'm not going to wait for each step, but that later on changes behavior of the people because they become more and more nervous as they meet more people, so they start to behave differently. You can see at some point this, if you go closer because here it's very small, these orange dots start to become more like moving nervously. We used this simulation as a storytelling machine. Let's say this is not usually the way that these programs are used. We borrowed it from let's say, a research environment, from scientific environment, to play certain stories of what could happen potentially in the city if certain policies are changed. So we used it to play different scenarios. Another scenario which we see after that is called Nerve City, and what happens if, for instance, groups of people bigger than 5 are forbidden together, how does that influence the behavior of other people? Why we did this? Because we were interested in how the perception of public space and use of public space is changing nowadays. Maybe some 20-30 years ago, it was more clear to whom public space belongs or what is a total public space. And nowadays, these ideas about public space are less and less clear. And somehow we wanted to use this tool to show the different transformation of the idea of the public space. And maybe just to show very shortly, when I will give the word to Mario, just for you to understand that this, in the end, is not just a projection, but it is a certain program in which a number of parameters are set, and this simulation then runs according to these parameters which are given. Each of these steps you can influence and change, and different things can happen according to how you set it up, but also how these different actors, which are independent small figures moving around, what they decide to do themselves. So each time it is different. Maybe I let it go. And what is interesting is that when we were doing this project, we worked, Mark and me, we worked together with Mario, who is not an artist. He is not also even an architect, but he comes really from the engineering field. And while we borrowed Mario, let's say, into art context, after this project, he actually decided to go back to his, or to new scientific field for him, and he decided to do a PhD program at TU Delft, at the Faculty of Civil Engineering, to develop actually these simulations further. And now I would like to give him a word, and he will tell you in short about another, much more maybe serious project, which has been happening in the context of, let's say, real life and even for real business. It is about Schiphol Plaza, which models behavior of different users of the space and projection for the future. We just have to switch to the
You can switch on.
Yeah.
Do we have to use a mic?
Well, Anna introduced myself already. And just briefly, just give a background of this simulation, what you saw, and the one I will show is, so I am a researcher at TU Delft and the Transport and Planning Department, and we do study the behavior of pedestrians. And so, just to give you a brief idea, what does it mean? Because you saw the application in the project in the Voorstraat. It's kind of a ludic game-like or art-like application. But we do this kind of models with really the intention to simulate as precise as possible how the average or the collectivity of people would behave in these situations. And what is the idea? So I think everybody here is a pedestrian, so we understand that walking is quite a complicated thing if you think of all the decisions you have to take when you're walking, especially if you're walking in the center of the city, if you're leisurely walking and so on. But are you connected? You need to, it doesn't go automatically, I think. artists come later. And so we research how people walk in a sort of scientific way, the most... so imagine when you're walking there, what we consider is we don't try to model a person, although we do have a model of a pedestrian, individual pedestrian, but we want some sort of common behavior. What you do, just imagine when you're walking, for instance, in the train, going to take a train or something like that, and you're not really consciously thinking that you're walking, you're just going somewhere, avoiding people, avoiding obstacles, walking with a certain speed, and taking some routes. This is we do it with a very, quite a common way. So this is what we research. What you see here is an application of the model that we did. It's very similar. The basics, so to say, is the model that we did for the Voorstraat. But this is a much more evolved, especially because it is a model that is calibrated in reality using, we did experiments with people walking, we filmed, we took quite some data to model each pedestrian. So this project was quite a special project because we got this question from the Schiphol. I want to make it a bit more juicy. Oh, not this one. Yeah. Now just change the colors because they have a reason. Sorry, it's a bit fragmented, but okay. And the question is, what you see here is a simulation of the future. This kind of model is allows designers or architects or planners to have a look in what-if stories. So this is, you can see already some really strange things happening there. But this is the commission we got from the Schiphol Plaza group with the increase of passengers that they have projected for 30% more passengers in 2017, plus some changes on the infrastructure, on the layout of the plaza, what would be the impact? So this is, you can see 8 o'clock, 17 minutes after 8, on a sort of peak day, and you can see the different type of people. The colors represent different type of people. Dark blue are arriving passengers. You can see here on the arriving passenger. Probably you all already been in some situation one another. You can see here already that this is something that they didn't like to see, of course, that is going to be very full. So this is quite a sophisticated simulation behind, not only because there are many pedestrians and they are doing a lot of things, but the story that we have to tell here is similar to a bit of what Anna was saying, because it's a scenario. People go to shopping, go to bars or restaurants, buy stuff, sit in banks and so on. And this is a type of simulation that is used really for assessing densities, assessing security, quality of walking. And I will zoom a bit in because you can see that this is quite detailed. I managed to. So you can see here. Now, a bit more zoomed in. You can see, for instance, on some of these revolving doors, there's quite some congestion too. So these are kind of indications for them. What are the bottlenecks? What are the problems that they may encounter? Things that they have to look in the future. So basically this is a tool that can be used very straightforward, like in this case, or maybe create different type of scenarios, like what Anna showed before, with different kind of intentions. And I guess that's it.
Maybe I can ask you something. If you look at this street where we are now, you could also imagine making a model of such a street, the Voorstraat. If it works for the Witte de Witstraat, we can also make it of this street. Could such a tool, could it help in a different way of designing this street, being more inclusive, maybe more interactive? Could it help you in, for instance, discussing and showing certain decisions which you could make about this street?
Well, certainly. I think it's a lot about the questions that could be made if the people involved in renewing the city or incrementing the city are interested in maybe indeed on the public space, on the how some place would influence the flow, the route that people would take and the choices, or is the sidewalk wide enough for some sort of summer terrace moment? Yeah, certainly. This is, especially if there would be some kind of festivals planned, like we have the Wereld van Witte. So in this case, would be quite indeed interesting to use it.
Could you also see maybe in such a model what would be the, let's say, the effect on the street life of having a lot of cultural attractions, or like galleries and cultural entrepreneurs and all these things which are planned?
Well, I don't know. I mean, yes, you can always. The power of visualization is very important, I think. I mean, we did actually in the time other projects, and when you show some life into a design and a drawing, for the designer, sometimes it triggers some consequences, some ideas that he was not really aware. I cannot say, because this is not, after all, not such a complex street, the movements and the flows, it's kind of straightforward. But I think there is a value of trying to see the flow inside your design. And in this sense, in general, the answer, yeah, of course, is always useful. Yeah.
Would someone else like to ask Mario or Anna a question? Maybe in that case we should move on to the next presentation. Thanks.
Okay, next presentation is at number 180, which is on the other side. So walk past the gallery and just continue, and you'll get there.
Okay, everybody, welcome here. Actually, we have two spaces, also the space next door. So explain that a bit more later. Here are Arjan, Schepenisse and Ilko, two students from the Rietveld Academy. We're in the graduating year. Last year we made up a project for the academy for assignment we had. It was about exploring interfaces in relation to games, and well, we started with the idea what do we like about gaming, and eventually we came up with this project. And Arjan's gonna tell a bit more about that.
All right. What we did was basically we wanted to virtualize gaming. We see the trend these days. Of course, it's the gaming industry, and the trend these days is that the gaming becomes physical again. More like you have the Wii, for instance. That's a really people are actually jumping again to play games instead of just using their thumbs. And we wanted to extend that a bit further. What we really like about gaming and about computer gaming also is that you can play it with somebody at the other end of the world if you want. the space is not really important anymore in this, to be together is not really important anymore. But because you can be together in the virtual space, and therefore we thought, well, can we make this more physical again? Because gaming is about for the large part about having fun, and one way to have fun is really to do exercises, to play hide and seek, all that kind of stuff, and to be able to do those kind of things remotely. We came up with this idea. So maybe.
Yeah, a bit more background maybe. Today communication tends to be only on a virtual level. We use telephone a lot, we use SMS text a lot, internet, emailing, and well, we have the idea that the physical part in the communication, the physical interaction is becoming more important again. So we came up with something physical, bringing back the physical into interacting. So that's how we came up with this project. Basically, it's very simple. It's for everybody easy to understand. It's just good old ping pong, but then you can play it to somebody that's in the other room. But we're gonna play it with real ping pong balls. So I think it's about time we're gonna do some demo, and then people can try it after us.
First, I think it's a good idea to first we do the demo. Or, I don't know, because because there are process to be in a Q&A. So if people aren't also there, it's not really handy. So maybe we could do the demo first and then the Q&A here. So everybody stays here, I go to there, and then I come and go.
It's on your own safety, yeah? It's not...
ga ik weer naar die andere kant. Als iemand het wil doen aan deze kant, dan mag dat.
Oh, even rapen.
Wil jij? Niet te geloven. Ik ga wel even voor je vallen pakken. Ik gooi je alleen de eerste op. Oh ja. Het helpt niet echt, hè? Spot bij. Beter?
Hier staan de data van dit jaar nog op. De openingen zijn nog twee jonge meisjes. me ook denken aan de Pink Floyd roes met al die lampen. Dat is wel een bekende roes. Die potjes. Maar ze hebben wel onze roes bij. Ja. Ik denk eerder wel bovenaan.
Hi, good night. My name is Arturo Hernandez. I'm an artist in residence here invited by the Baschz, by the Noordkaap, and by Katia Diallo. And well, now I'm working in a project here in Dordrecht. I'm here for the second time, and well, I really would like to make a very short context about my work, my background work. Well, for the last at least 4 years, I have been working in a specific site project in Mexico City. Most part of the times in Mexico City, but around also. Making a kind of research about empty places in the city and taking them just for temporary interventions or occupations, organizing with other artists or by myself or with architects or even with the city. So I'm quite interested in my work goes through somehow a strategy about approaching to systems which we all know pretty well, like city, like economies, like politics, etc., like those kind of systems. And my job is pretty like tiny between these huge systems as we mean a city. So what I used to do is to work with the worthless materials, trying to get related to the very huge values we have in our society, so in our informative context. So the work I want to develop here for the next 4 weeks, it was like pretty close for the interests, also for the Noordkaap interest, like this activity to activate spaces, like empty spaces with no activity in the city. So the case of a Noordkaap is quite similar, quite close to me. But well, the main project I'm making here is I would like to place my work into different lecture channels. In one side, I have like this interest to get involved and to relate into these systems. In this case, this economical catastrophe context in which we are all living nowadays, and putting in relation with a very worthless materials and worthless values like dust, for example, which we are always, and we are all pretty well related to. We are all even composed by very small particles. So in a way to make a kind of like a physical but very small exchange and relation between this economics and this worthless material, I would like to get into the context and to the historical context of this city, which in my research I found like some information, like for example the first Netherlands coin was made here some 100 years ago. So well, my main plan for here in this residence project is to not to establish, but to take one of the empty shops in the Voorstraat and try to look out for a kind of experiment which will be to make a coin made about dust I can collect here, like which belongs originally to you, and well, this project started last year in Mexico City. I started like publishing announcements in the newspapers, where I was just announcing I was buying dust for an infinitive sculpture. So people start to call me like, what do you mean with dust and what kind of dust do you buy? And after that I start just to make a speculation system, like giving different values each time to this worthless material. So in the way the financial and this imaginary world in which we live in just assume that this costs this and this value is for this thing, etc., etc. So I really want to I really get very enthusiastic when Kate told me maybe some shop will be available. So because my work goes through this, I like to place my work in these hollows, where if we have a system which we all know pretty well, as a city, for example, we know everything is pretty well attached there, right? And the development also, and the economics, and the work, and the people, and the community, etc., etc. And it's changing all the time. The cities are like a kind of organism which is just moving around. So, but where I want to or where I like to place my work is in these very tiny places, when suddenly there's a hollow or a crack or something, which I think art is able to take the form of it, like to shape on it for a little time, and then activate these kind of spaces for a while, right? Before something very established came. And well, in this way of exchanging, and I would like you to join for a really tiny but exchange at the end action, with a little help from my friends Marlene and Jan. So what I want to do here is, I don't know to call it a performance or what, but it's like my starting point for my project here, and for this develop of a new kind of temporary economy, which will be built all by dust, which is just around here, everywhere. So well, if you this starting point is my my first research for material to make this kind of experiment in the shop, which is called Dust Devil, and yeah, just on the machines. So what I mean with exchange is I would like to exchange with you the main particles we are surrounded by. This in the image is one of the first results. Even I don't like to call them results. I think it's a whole process, just cut it in parts and then you show each part, each phase. But, well, this will be you will be my main material, I mean. And after some weeks the coins will be available in my shop. So any contribution will be pretty well accepted. You will also could find every week a new announcement about the dust, and with my telephone, a Dutch telephone, and then you will be able to sell the dust to me, but the prices will be always going down, always up, getting related to other kind of values like the oil from the North Sea, or the oil from Venezuela, or the gold in Africa, or the dollar if it's already existing, or the euro, long life to it, or even other kind of values. So. So this was the first result. I was not even able to breathe for a while. But this idea of the which I mean with the infinitive sculpture, and with this like a kind of relations between economics, like this imaginary economic system, and the dust and the infinite sculpture is something like a place which exists just for a few minutes, and but suddenly exist and take the form of the empty space, of the architecture, of the city, of each hollow in the street, like something which is not there. So, I mean, for this kind of development in the cities, I mean, every city has its own development, and we all want to develop more and to rise a nice community, and etc., right? But I think that if it's a commitment for the art practice, is to activate suddenly these kind of spaces these open spaces where no politics or no economics are able to get the shape of it, but art has this quality to take the form of these kind of spaces, which is, for me, is quite interesting to work on it in a different context. Like now, I'm here in Dordrecht, for example, which is even all the cities are almost the same. If we take a look, like a clever look about the main materials, each one has different ways of going on different relations with the power, with the dust even. So let's see what happens in Dust Devil in the next weeks, and all contributions will be very well accepted. Thank you very much.
Would someone like to ask Arturo some questions?
How do you keep the dust?
What?
How do you keep it, the dust?
In bags.
Do you take them as well?
I take them, like I collect all the dust, and for making this coin, I will use another worthless material, which is wax, to put it all together. But it's funny what happens there, thinking on it as a sculpture, and this infinity sculpture, because as you have your wax and dust coin, its value, as I can convince you, the dust has some value. It will be increasing because of the dust is getting on it pasted again and again and again and again. So yeah, it's a kind of play in not exactly in the urban, but in the system, like kind of imaginary logarithm, which could be always growing and growing.
So all dust is equal, in your opinion?
No, not all dust is equal. This will be very expensive. But no. What I'm doing is to speculate with the value of dust, as someone else can speculate the value of oil, for example.
So we can invest in dust?
Yes, you can. I hope you will. And yeah, that's not all the story, but the rest will come. Thank you very much.
So Edwin is here to introduce the Wormhole project to you. And we also have the headphones here to experience the Wormhole project. But before you run out with the headphones, we will have a small debate after Edwin's presentation, and then you're more than welcome to take one of the headphones.
Okay, I'll give you a short introduction to the project. Just to create a context to the project, the CBK here in Dordrecht is every 2 years organizing an exhibition. It's called Proeftuin. And Proeftuin, from what I know, I mean, for me it's also the first time to organize something or to curate something for the CBK. But it's a project which is based on where a curator or multiple curators are invited and to organize a project with their ex-students. In this case, it was me and Jos Rekveld that were invited to think about the project using sound in public space. And this is something that relates at this moment actually to the CBK's interest, and it's also something that we will organize a couple of additional events around. But so both Joost and me were asked to think about a project using art in public space and involving, using sound in public space and involving ex-students of us. And this actually is about students from the interfaculty, currently called Interfaculty Art Science in The Hague, which is an interfaculty from the Conservatory and the Arts Academy in The Hague. And what we came up with at the end is that we realized that it would be too difficult, also because of the length of the project, to really have all individual projects installed in Dordrecht, partly because of maintenance issues, partly also because not everybody, and I mean, they can be currently already experienced artists, but there are not that many people that have a lot of experience on really dealing with the public space, well, dealing with sound in the public space, and also thinking about the implications of it. So what we actually did is we developed a model, and let's say that's the wormhole model, where we thought about one model that everybody would use, but that there would be enough freedom for the participants to develop their own project. And what we did is that we developed, simply based on the new iPhones, we created a, let's say, locative media project, in the sense that we created an environment where ideally any number of sound files could be inserted, and at the same time any number of they could be assigned to any number of locations. And what you see here is the general map, and over there I've seen them already, and also at the entrance there are the flyers that you need to understand the project. But basically we have 10 participants, where number 2, I have to warn you, still didn't finish the project. So actually the project is there in the iPhone, but it's not working. Or, well, there's some other thing, but it's a test project at the number 2. All the other projects are working. And basically they have all come with different approaches and different ideas of how to create a new sound world in Dordrecht. And that means that some of the contributions are purely conceptual. As you can see, for example, there's one grid of the yellow dots, it's a work by Taco Stolk, that is totally conceptual in the sense that he is thinking about different ratios, different frequencies, actually string resonance frequencies coming from the string theory, and mapping them over Dordrecht, where other people have created narrative projects, for example, relating to the history of Dordrecht. And there's one story of one woman that was paying people to work with coins, and she always had 3 coins to pay them. And at this moment, these people, they thought, well, maybe we can just rob the woman and get the coins. And actually, she only had 3 coins on her, and they couldn't find any other money. So that's another story, an example of a narrative story, which is completely different from, again, for example, Taco's project. And maybe also to explain the projects that are, like one project that you can see here. Yeah, that's actually the only project that's really a route, which means it's a sequence that you can walk, and you're supposed, I mean, maybe you don't, but you're supposed to really follow the line and walk it in that order, and you will experience a story that is in that particular order, where you can see that other projects are more field-based, where you as a participant are supposed to just navigate the field and make your own choices within that particular field. Yeah, that's about it. I think there are about 6, I've seen 6 headphones, so I guess there are 6 devices that you can get and take out and explore. I don't know if there's anybody to give some additional information. I see Joris over there a little bit, so maybe I will help him later after the debate to get you going, because there are a couple of things you have to know, and then otherwise it should explain itself. Yeah, so there are 6 devices available for after the debate, and just to go into the city. Of course, I should also say the project is still running until 5th of April, so on the other hand, there's a lot of time to explore it. And it's not something, because there are 10 different projects that you can switch between, and they don't overlap. You choose World 1, World 2, or, I mean, actually they have all different names, but in total there are 10 different worlds, and it's not a project that you just experience in half an hour if you really want to experience everything. It takes I would say hours. So don't expect that you can do that tonight. But okay, that's it.
Edwin, maybe a question. You decided to go out of the garden and to go into the streets here in the center of Dordrecht. Inserted these installations or artworks. What would you say? What happens actually to those spaces when these works get inserted? What changes?
Well, I mean, it's not so much that it's not really inserted in spaces. Although it depends on the project. At some projects, the sounds are assigned really to very small locations, and sometimes it's even difficult to get at the proper location to experience the sounds. And on the other hand, there are projects where sounds overlap much more. But it really depends on the approach. So for Joost and me, it's the idea that in a sense there are 10 parallel worlds, and you can switch between these worlds. And of course these worlds, just like adding a different soundtrack to a movie would change the movie drastically. And that's a similar, that's a good metaphor to explain that also we want to add 10 new realities or 10 new interpretations to Dordrecht. But of course, as you can see also on the map, it really depends on the project. There are some areas, and especially here in the center part, so from the CBK actually even further down, that overlap, but then there are some other projects that really have their own location or area.
Is there someone else with a question for Edwin? Maybe it's a good moment to check actually what do you get from such an evening like this. Of course, it's very difficult to see. There are very different works, very different approaches. The one which we saw down the street is actually it's a simulation. It's maybe something which leans on the edge of game design scenario playing. But on the other hand, you see that it has a very real, very business-like application in Schiphol Plaza. So it finds a completely different use. Ping pong is of course a completely different type of application. I wanted to ask actually Katja. In the beginning, we got a short explanation about the ideas for the street, and I quoted also a little bit from I referred to the plan for the street, which has these 3 tracks of bringing in cultural entrepreneurs, bringing in cultural program, and interventions in the street. And I wanted to know in which way do actually your ideas or the ideas here at Noordkaap about what to do in this field of culture and cultural entrepreneurship or creative entrepreneurship, in which way does it overlap and differ from the ideas which are developed by the city? Are you having the same ideas, or are you having slightly different opinions about what could or should be done with a street like this?
I think in Noordkaap we do not concentrate on entrepreneurship this much as is presented in the whole project planning for the Voorstraat Noord. This is also where we enter some confrontations between our idea of what a creative street should or could be like. We are not merely interested in trapping people to buy stuff, to put it simply, or to see nice things or beautiful things like flowers and beautiful lights. We are merely interested in trapping people by surprising them with sometimes very ugly things, sometimes very beautiful things, and most of the time things people don't really understand in just 1 minute. We overlap in our ideas about a nice street by taking this street as a nice starting point, because I think that Noordkaap as well as the city council, we both think that this is a very unique and wonderful street as it already is, with all the different inhabitants, different shops, different non-spaces, and what will come out, we don't know.
And in which way do you think that urban play could help in the redevelopment of a street like this street?
Yeah, well, I think like tonight is a very nice example. People start to move differently. They see different things. Maybe it's for a short moment, and maybe it's for a relatively small group. But we join together to explore the street in a different way. You don't really get anything from it. You don't really take anything from the street home. There are only experiences. I think this is a strong a point for urban play, to play. Yeah.
And for you, the cultural entrepreneur is maybe something like what we saw here, from dust to gold, almost the alchemy.
That would be one of my ideas of cultural or creative entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, we saw the presentation of the plan for the street. Now, I think in many different cities, there are all these plans for creative zones, creative buildings, in certain creative entrepreneurship. I wanted to ask you, if you see this set of projects, do you think that there is some kind of potential for a quite different form of a creative street? If you compare it to the reign of creative projects which we see everywhere around.
Well, the first project I saw with the light, that really pushed the button in my mind, because that did something with the space, with the actual space that is built, and gave new meaning and new potentials to a building or a street, and that changes the position actually at that moment. You can give another meaning to a certain spot in the street, how contemporary it is. Other projects I saw were, I think, far for a shorter period, and had just a meaning for this time, because the cultural project that are starting now means that we are, as a group, are here in the Voorstraat. But tomorrow the project doesn't mean a lot for the Voorstraat. So I think when you're starting this project, you're always how long has it effect, and what does it do with the actual space outside? So that's one of the things I learned.
Okay, and as I understand in the plan which you are making, let's say the focus on cultural program is mainly in the starting period of the project. In the first 2 years, it's very important. Can you explain why is that?
Because if we do nothing, the street goes down and further down. So we have to start now to do activities for a short period, and try to create an upgoing development. So that's very important to start all these certain things. So from all these short time things, bigger things are growing for a longer period.
And what happens after these 2 years? What happens to the position of culture and cultural entrepreneurship in such a street?
I think if it's a team for the street for a longer period, we always need to explore new things, always looking for new ways to stimulate activity in the street. So it can go on for many
many years.
And Katja, what do you expect after 2 years here?
Yeah, I agree that we should find a way to keep continuing some sort of movement. But for in this case, after 2 years, I'm not so sure. We have been here now for 1 year. Things are changing, but I think it's also, it can be changed back very easily. So, for instance, when we leave and when there will be another, or the attention will get drawn to another piece of the city, and people are looking, because now everybody's like, oh, Voorstraat Noord, it's getting lots of attention, which is good. But when attention leaves, I think it's very well possible that within 5 years it will be like 5 years ago. And I'm not sure how we can change this. But we still have 1 year to think about it, or to try things out, test things.
Is there someone else who I can give the mic to respond or to ask some questions at this point?
Yeah, I'm still getting back to the point that it could be me, but I don't think there are a lot of people that actually live in the Voorstraat are here. So for me it feels a bit strange that we're talking about all the people living here, but there are the people that live here and they also have an opinion.
People that live here come here quite often, but the invitation was in English, and they don't like that. I sort of like it because I'm sort of used to it, but I understand that it's quite some text, and then it's so. You must trust me. This is some sort of exception that we are here now merely with guests. Actually, I saw one neighbor, but she was completely drunk.
Yeah, we saw her as well.
Exactly. So this is one of the exceptional evenings. But so yeah.
For us, it would be interesting to also have those people here at the same time as we.
Then you should come back another time within another setting, and I'm sure they will play some, or we will play some ping pong.
But I think there are also a few parties here that are close to the citizens of the street, and that's Stichting de Stad and also Progress. And I'm actually curious to learn what they think about this type of project that have been shown tonight. So maybe you can add a few words?
I'm also sure that this will be something for here and for Dordrecht. I especially liked the first project because it does do something with the surroundings, and all the other products I saw are not specific for Dordrecht. And I think you must do projects which are very local, which come from here out. It can be someone from outside, from another country, who comes here and he is researching what's needing here. But the projects we saw today, most of them, are universal projects. Very good, I like them. But I don't think it will has its potential for here.
And what, for instance, about the project that Edwin introduced, because that is very local. It's even actually based sometimes on like local structures and local stories.
Yes, that's what I like. Yeah. That's, for instance, the colors, I showed, the colors of Dordrecht. That succeeded because it is from here, and people are proud of it. They are using the colors, that's very good to do. And when we started that project, we were all looking at Torino, and we were looking at Barcelona, and we didn't know that we only had to look at Dordrecht. and explore the things which were here. And we had gold in our hands. And now we are exploring it in all the Netherlands. We've been in Tilburg. We're doing a project now in the Hague for the colors there, because it was a success here.
Michel, maybe I can ask you something. You, together with Katja, brought this idea of urban play here. It's something which is quite hot at the moment. You co-organized some kind of symposium along with the book launch in Rotterdam some time ago. At the moment there is experimental design. It's a design biennial, I guess, in Amsterdam going on. I think next Saturday will be the closing debate where they will draw the conclusions about the usefulness also of urban play. In the flyer you were very strong, boasting actually about the potential of urban play. Though there are these two very different directions. The one field is coming from the media arts and the idea of augmented spaces, the overlaying of media space on top of physical space. I think what we see more in Amsterdam in this experimental design are more physical interventions in space, small scale, partly co-organized by Droog Design. Urban play, I sometimes have the feeling that, well, there is a small difference, but important between play and game. Because game is somehow playing to the rules, according to the rules. And I have the feeling that a lot of the interventions which we see in this experimental design are actually very safe, very much bringing some kind of smile, adding some kind of varnish to the surrounding, and they actually lack the real effect of play, of really discovering something, of bouncing to the border, checking out what's really going on. How do you see that? Do you see these two different tendencies in it? How do you see urban play right now?
How I see urban play right now is that in many of the more design-oriented works, for instance shown at Experimenta, I think the participatory part of it is sometimes lacking. But in general, I think everyone agrees that this whole research into urban play has very much potential also for city development, but that somewhere it just keeps from cashing in its potential. It's shown in experimental design that you can actually put life into parts of the city by adding urban play-ish design. If you look at augmented reality media art, there is it's clear to everyone it has a potential for city and city space, and also in development projects. But somehow you hardly ever see them implemented in real urban development programs, and that's also why we thought we thought out the concept for this evening, connecting a real urban development case to several urban play projects, and then see what happens.
Now this was a very small test case. With works which are actually for a large part brought in, made for other spaces, so they are not very specific. That's what you also indicated. So it's maybe even difficult to judge their value here. Is this something which you're going to try in on other occasions, maybe in other places?
Well, what I kind of like about the remarks coming from the city developer side is that they say it has to come from here, it has to be local. And in that sense, I would think that commissioning people to create urban play for a specific problem would actually work better than what we try to do here tonight. But then there is a financial problem. But I think that when we can get people to realize that it is actually possible to provide solutions with urban play, then the rest of the problems, such as getting commissions for it, should also start rolling.
But do you think, for instance, of co-organizing or co-hosting projects between V2 and Noordkaap in the future?
I think we should. Because I think we all agree that there's a huge potential there, and if tonight already brought some insights from both perspectives, and we should just build on from there. So yes.
Can I add something? Because I think what Michel said is tonight we try to sense what could work, but has potential, but it also is a very first start in a planned collaboration between V2 and V2's recent spin-off, the Patching Zone, and Noordkaap, who are planning now for a longer-term collaboration to really have artists and students working in the Voorstraat for a year or maybe two, to really work together with people in the street, but hopefully also with urban planners and people who are in the housing corporations here, to really try and figure out how we can embed these kind of ideas we brought in tonight in a more local context, not necessarily with local artists, but maybe also from people from abroad, as we, what I really liked about the presentations this evening, we noticed that sometimes it gives a very nice effect when people from abroad or from another context really look differently on the local context. So I think we touched upon some potential, and I think if people here in Dordrecht also agree with us, and Katja is really working hard on that as well, to make the next steps, but then really in collaboration with people in the street, but also with the people of Dordrecht, to make it really happen. And then probably the artists working here will be invited for the next event, probably in Amsterdam, to show the good case scenarios from Dordrecht. So that's the kind of idea. You circle around it a little bit, and it's a bit of taste. But I totally agree with you that this is just a start, and it's really, it feels like we should continue, because there's a lot of potential here. And I hope we agree on that. In that sense, I'm really happy that also a lot of the people working here in Dordrecht attended and shared their ideas, because actually I also learned a lot this evening, and a lot of little things you always overlook when you are coming in from the outside. So in that sense, I'm really happy with this beautiful situation with Noordkaap and all the people from Dordrecht.
So it seems we'll be back here in not too long time.
Yeah, let's go for that.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask, are there some recommendations for this possible collaboration coming up?
Jody wil wel iets doen.
I didn't get it, but...
Ja, ik wil wel iets doen met wie.
Okay, we have the first one. So it even has a tangible result. Great. I think if there are no more comments, I would like to close this part and hand the mic to Michel.
I have one.
Great.
So I would like to take this moment to first tell you that after this, you're welcome to explore the project that Edwin introduced with the headphones there. You can pick them up at yours there. Yours, wave your hand.
Yeah, Edwin is now testing the system himself because there seems something wrong. The GPS couldn't pick the signal. But he will be back in a couple of minutes and tell us whether it's working or not.
Okay.
You can see him outside. There he is with his headphones on. He's testing it right now.
In the meantime, we will also open up the stores again. So the store spaces that you visited before, you can have a closer look at the installation by Stel at number 28. And also play some more virtual ping pong at number 181 and 183. in the meantime, here you can also entertain yourself with these little lights that you can actually throw to iron bits and they'll stick. And you're welcome to pick up some elements here on the table and create your own and throw them all around the city. Let's leave our mark in the city. And in the meantime, the bar will be running here. We'll have a DJ playing some music provided by MAñANA. And before we go into dancing, I would also like to thank, of course, Mark for his moderation tonight. Henrik of Stichting de Stad, Edwin of the city of Dordrecht for his presentation at the start, Pablo Valbuena for traveling all the way down to Dordrecht this morning, Mario and Anna of Stealth, Arjen and Ilko of onsignal.org, that was a fun demo, Arturo Hernandez for introducing his residency project here, Edwin from the Heide, of course, for introducing the wormhole project that you can explore when he gets back. And, of course, also the people that made this possible behind the stage. The people here at Noordkaap have been wonderful hosts today, but also have put a great effort in co-organizing this evening tonight. So I want to thank them especially, Katja and Jan especially, but also the people here behind the bar. Then there's... Yes. We'll do a big applause for everyone in the end, okay? Of course, the people of the V2 crew, Richard and Wilco, will be preparing the production for today together with Jan of Noordkaap. And then there's the documentation team, Menold and Carl, that will make sure that you can look back at the documentation of tonight online on the V2 website if you're interested. Okay, so that's time for the big applause for everyone.
Get a book from me. People who want to have this, they can come and get it from me.
Okay, DJ, you can hit it. I just heard that I forgot an important party tonight, which is Progress, who actually made it possible for us to use all these spaces in the street here. So this is also an important thank you to make.
Hier.